to enter the NBA draft. Grayson Grundhoefer. We've heard from Paul and Craig about NFL Pro Day, and also Jack McKenzie gave us the Jalen Petrie, and among all the other interviews. And Grayson joins us now on Sic'Em 365 Radio, as he was there as well. So, Grayson, we had a little bit from Jalen Petrie. We discussed the 50 scouts, 31 NFL teams, other leagues as well. Anything in particular, one or two items that pop out to you on what you saw today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the place that you have to start are those 240 times for Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard. I mean, they did themselves some major favors by running at the Pro Day and running really well. Starting with Jalen, everyone loves Jalen. Like, you could tell from the scouts that were talking about him. I mean, they were just raving about him, just about, like, it was basically nonchalant, like, man, that Petrie guy is good. You know what I mean? Like, they know. And so for him to go out there and put up a time that I would say is probably on the high end of what people's expectations were, I was thinking he'd probably be a mid 4.5 guy, and he ends up running in the mid 4.4s, high 4.4s, somewhere in there, which is just great for him. And then as far as Terrell Bernard goes, again, elite instincts on the football field, much like Jalen Petrie, but a lot of question marks about whether he would run fast at the Pro Day. And to be honest, I think some people thought he'd be like a 4.8 guy. I kind of was thinking maybe a 4.7, like a low 4.7. And he ends up running, high 4.5s, low 4.6s. So that's massive for his draft stock as well. So those two really stood out to me. I think Abram Smith, 4.5 at 213 pounds is also something to keep an eye on, as I think he probably moved himself up a round or two as well. So overall, a great day. Taekwon continues to impress. JT Woods, people love how rangy and long he is as well. Gary Bohannon went out there and threw the ball for Drew Estrada and Taekwon and Treston Ebner and Abram. So it was a lot of fun. It was a really, really fun Pro Day, and it was great to see. Probably one of the better ones Baylor has ever had, to be honest.
Do you think anybody outside of that improved their – or anybody maybe we're not talking about improved their stock today?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because I know there have been a lot of people that have talked about how, Kaelin Barnes, just the on-the-field stuff. Is he really a good football player or just a great athlete? And, guys, he really performed well during the drills. I wouldn't say that he was out of this world, but he caught everything going through the DB drills. It seemed like people were really intrigued by the amount of passes he was able to catch as a defender, just showing off really soft hands. And when you put that along with the fact that he's got an 11-1 broad jump, the blazing 40 time in the 4.2s, I mean, he's a great athlete. And I think today he really showed off that ability to actually translate onto the football field, which I do believe will end up getting him drafted.
Grayson, interesting to see Gary Bohannon out there throwing, huh? And the comments subsequently afterwards from Drew Estrada, as well as, who was it? Somebody else was commenting about him. I forget now. I went blank. But talking about his velocity and the zip on the ball.
Yeah, Taekwon was the other one that mentioned him. He and Drew Estrada mentioned that they felt like there was a difference, that Gary had maybe gotten better or taken another step, at least in the velocity and deep ball department. And, truthfully, Gary's always done a really nice job in those type of settings throwing the football. He really has, and he continues to show it. And I felt like he was really accurate on the day as well. Now, again, it's just throwing the football to these guys, and they've been training together for a long time. So I think the biggest part to take away from it is probably the velocity part, because, Gary's been throwing with Taekwon for a really long time, and Drew just this year, but it's clear they have a connection. And then to hear them talk about Gary, improving and getting better, I think that's always a great sign.
Grayson, if you don't mind me turning the corner here a little bit with Josh White, obviously the LSU, he's entered the transfer portal. I believe I saw something to note that might be coming to Baylor or visiting soon, along with every blue blood good team in America, name or even success recently. How much would this be a monster win if Dave Aranda and company can bring him to Waco?
Oh, it would be huge, guys. And I actually had the chance to talk to Josh on my way up to Waco today before Pro Day, and really got some insight into kind of, what's going on in his recruitment now and just kind of how things have blown up once again for him. I mean, he was a top 150 prospect coming out of high school, so this really isn't new to him, but it's just another phase in the process. And Dave Aranda, Dennis Johnson, they both built great relationships with him when they were at LSU. They were his lead recruiters. He also has good relationships with Alec Osborne, Caleb Collins, you name it. Drake Dabney and him go back to middle school. They've been friends for a really long time, both from the Cypress area. So a lot of connections to Baylor, a lot of great relationships at Baylor. And so the Bears got his first visit. Dave called basically the day they entered the transfer portal. And, when the head coach calls you and offers you and has that relationship and that great communication with you, I think it really stands out. And he mentioned, him coming to Baylor is going to feel like a family reunion because he just knows so many people in the program and on the staff. He's coming on Saturday, so he'll be visiting Baylor Saturday. But I do believe he's going to take his time a little bit. He does want to make a decision by the end of the month, April. By the end of April, he wants to have a decision made. I think Texas and TCU are two schools that will likely get a visit over the next few weeks. And then USC is the out-of-state school that's kind of made a big push for him at the moment. So right now, based on what we talked about, it's basically those four schools involved early. He's got more offers as well. But it does seem like he'd like to be closer to home inside the state of Texas. And those ties with Baylor are definitely very strong. And I think, if you go and look at kind of his film and what he could bring to the table, I mean, this is a guy that could come in and play right away, especially since Baylor's trying to fill in at the will linebacker position now that Terrell Bernard is moving on to the NFL.
Had he not gone to LSU, did I see something in one of your posts inside the premium section that Oklahoma was hot on his heels as well? And obviously that's USC and Lincoln Riley now.
Yeah, we were laughing about that a little bit because he was saying how all these schools that are recruiting him now were recruiting him at different schools during his previous recruitment. So it's kind of funny, right? Because you got Lincoln and that staff. They were recruiting him at Oklahoma. Dave was recruiting him at LSU. Brian Carrington was recruiting him at Texas. He's at TCU now. The Texas staff was at Alabama. Now they're at Texas now, a lot of them. So, it's just kind of all comes full circle for him. And now he's trying to figure out his next destination. But I will say he visited Baylor a lot, during that 2018 recruiting period. He was a 2020 prospect, but he visited in 2018, 2019, because Baylor was his first offer. So he visited 3 or 4 times, was in Waco, likes Waco a lot, built great relationships with Coach Rule and Evan Cooper and Mike Sarabo, but ultimately decided LSU was the spot for him. But now, it's a second chance. And I think he realizes that, and he realizes that, Baylor was a good fit for him probably the first time around, but now they also have Dave Aranda, which I think is also a big X factor for him in his decision-making process, especially because, he's a guy at LSU that had so many coaching changes on the defensive side of the ball, from Dave Aranda to Bo Pelini to, these next guys that have come in at LSU. And so I think he's looking for some stability, and I think Dave Aranda probably brings that to the table better than anyone else.
One other note, and then I will let you go, and we appreciate your time. Matt Jones in a cast, is that what I saw? A note that you had as well?
Yeah, he was on I don't even know what you call it. I guess it's one of those bikes where, you're kind of sitting on it, but it's more of like a rehab bike type thing. So he was on that with a cast on his, it's kind of on his ankle and foot. So I don't know which one the injury is, but I would assume, just based on his injury history, that it's probably an ankle. But I feel for him. I noted that he hadn't been at practice the past 2 Tuesdays that I'd been out to see the open session. And so, to see him in a cast at Pro Day, it's really a bummer because I know Dave Aranda had great things to say about him in a ESPN feature, just talking about him possibly taking over at the will linebacker spot. So it's another speed bump for him, but I'm sure he'll get back to full 100% soon. And I wish him the best because he's going to play a big role in their defense next year.
After the penalty against Oklahoma State, I thought he played his best football the rest of the way. Even after being in the doghouse, it seemed like when he did play, it seemed like he was very active, and maybe that was able to kind of get him to another level, almost as if he felt like he had to make up for something, whether he did or not. Grayson, thank you for the trip up here. Also, you and Craig and Jack at Pro Day, thanks for your time, and be careful on the way back.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Grayson
Grundhoefer, Sic'Em 365 Radio, 365 Sports on Tuesdays. Grayson and Craig with the Bearcast, full hour plus of nothing but Baylor like slobber. And I'm not saying that in a way of homerism, but just everything you can imagine.
Close, yeah. I don't do that homer thing like
that. No, that's not what I meant by it. That's why I wanted to clarify. I'm talking about you want to hear anything about Baylor, whatever it is. The Bearcast is an hour plus of that for you to slobber as a fan of Baylor, not so much the opinions and stuff like that as well. Paul, did you hear that we mentioned Tiger and Craig in his off-the-radar play? He did play all